Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Gamers Tavern. Today, Jesse Scoble joins Ross Watson and myself to discuss technology and gaming, and let me tell you, the gods of the digital did not want you to hear us discussing their secrets. Ironically, our technology episode had more technological issues than any other episode we've recorded so far combined. Software, hardware, sound equipment all tried to keep this message from getting out, but not even the gods themselves can stop the signal. Okay, maybe I tempted them a little bit too far with that one, but anyway, please forgive the minor audio issues as we bring you Episode 6, Technology and Gaming, or Instant Game Publisher, just add Kickstarter. So grab a drink from the bar and join us at the table in the corner after this word from our sponsor.
Hey, have you heard of The Strange? Hi, I'm Bruce Cordell. The Strange is a role-playing game that supposes that just outside of what we think of as normal Earth, there's an alien data network called The Strange. We're running a Kickstarter right now to fund The Strange. To find it, go to Google and type in The Strange Kickstarter and follow the link provided. The Strange is host to a number of hidden worlds called recursions that player characters travel to and explore. One is a place called Arden, where magic powered by souls and other fabulous sorceries actually work.
Bruce and I have designed The Strange to use the same rules engine as Numenera, a rules engine we call the Cipher System. If you know and like Numenera, you'll like The Strange.
This message was brought to you by Monty Cook Games. If you want to know more about The Strange, go to Kickstarter.com and search for us there.
Hello, and welcome to Episode 6 of the Gamers Tavern podcast. I'm Ross Watson.
And I'm Daryl Mott Jr.
And tonight we have with us Jesse Scoble. Jesse, could you tell us a little bit about your gaming character sheet?
Sure. I am currently senior content designer on Wizard 101 for Kings Isle in Austin. That basically means writer. So I do most of the quests and stories for our new updates for Wizard 101. Before that, worked in Toronto at GANs for Webkins for a couple of years, and before that, I was NCSoft on City of Heroes in the web team. But before all this, computer game stuff, I worked in the pen and paper game field for about 5 years as a writer, designer, and editor for Guardians of Order primarily, and then for freelance work for companies like White Wolf, Green Ronin, guys like that.
Awesome. We actually had Ari Marmel on the last show talking about, well, not the last show, on a previous show, talking about White Wolf and what it was like.
It was the last show.
It was? Okay.
Yes.
I lose track of where we are with all these shows. We're doing quite a few.
Yeah.
But we talked considerably about, White Wolf as like a company. I think you would have found that very interesting. So, you worked on Silver Age Sentinels, is that right? I
did indeed. Those were back in the days when we had heard lots of people were using Big Eye Small Mouth to play superhero games, so we thought that would be a good thing to dive into. Champions had sort of fallen by the wayside, and there was nothing else on the horizon, and by the time we came out, Champions had come back, and Mutants and Masterminds had come out.
Yeah.
So the field became very crowded, but all good guys and the other companies and great products.
You actually did a crossover with Champions, didn't you?
We did, yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Reality Storm.
Very good, yeah. And we had a fun marketing campaign where we took shots of their characters and vice versa.
I'm an unabashed Champions fanboy. I just love everything Champions for the most part. I'm doing a big review of the different systems on my blog, actually. Reality Storm is something I'm going to be talking about fairly shortly when I get into 5th edition Champions. So, yeah, you were the line developer for a lot of stuff over at Guardians of Order.
I was. When we first started working on Silver Age Sentinels, Lucien Solban, who's a great friend and a mentor, was working with us. And then he got called back by the Siren Song of Montreal, so he left us. And I went from being pretty much the fiction world guy on Silver Age to being creative director of it. And then I took over, saw the project to completion and the various supplements we did.
And I've got to ask, is there connections between that and your work on City of Heroes, City of Villains?
Indirectly. When Guardians basically was ending, shall we say, nicely,
Yeah.
I was at a trade show in Las Vegas where we were promoting Game of Thrones. This is before all the really bad time, but we were trying to, it was still the end, but the good time part of it.
So you were at Gamma trade show in Las Vegas?
I was at the Gamma trade show, and we ran into Sean Fish from Cryptic Studios, and I had met Sean at a previous Gen Con or something. Sean was the lead writer of City of Heroes. And, he was asking what I was doing. I said, oh, well, I was kind of looking for a job, really, was what I was doing. I mean, I was there promoting Game of Thrones and Guardians, but the company was, the writing was clear on the wall at that point. And he said, hey, superhero games, because he knew my work on Silver Age, and I had also been the developer for the Authority role-playing game, where we took that comic from DC, Wildstorm, and turned it into a game. And he said, hey, well, we need a writer for web fiction for City of Heroes. And he said it's, writing web fiction, it's not game design, and it's Austin, not California, but if I wanted to, I would throw my resume in the ring. So that led to the gig at NCSoft, which was pretty cool. I mean, it was great fun to work with the City of Heroes guys.
Did you work with Jim Butcher over there when he was writing with them?
I know him, but I didn't really work with him, no.
Well, that's awesome. Well, the thing about what you're talking about, getting into technology and kind of merging that with gaming is kind of an awkward segue into tonight's theme. The show content we're going to talk about tonight is revolving around technology and the gaming table. I think we should probably start off by talking about, when we're talking about technology at the gaming table, I think primarily what we're talking about is the use of things like your phone or your iPad, tablets at the gaming table, and how that impacts the gaming table. And I guess, the first question we should talk about is, do you think that's a good thing for people to have those kind of things out and active during a game?
I think it really depends on the group, of course. I've been gaming in various sorts for many, many years. Not nowhere near as active as I'd like to be these days, but, I think that when a group is engaged and focused, then tablets and laptops and so forth can be a great aid, a great tool. We talk about all the things they can do. And when the group is distracted, whether that's because
2 weeks ago.
the group is too big or the GM is focusing too much on one player or a couple of players,
on the table,
or people that aren't engaged with it, whatever reasons are coming up, then
some sort of emergency happens. But
are they more distracting than back in the day when I would have a pile of comics next to me?
Okay, just let me check this real quick on Facebook, and I'll get to my turn.
Positives and trying to
let me finish writing this tweet
for everybody rather than worrying about whether it's one
it's just so easy just to completely derail the pacing of a game if everyone's doing that. And it's especially bad in my games because I'm a smoker. I'm going outside every hour or two for a cigarette. Do your online shit then.
I guess I'm like the substitute teacher at the high school because I kind of allow everything. if people have phones and iPad and pads and stuff, I'm like, I don't really. I guess it doesn't bother me, but I guess I kind of, in this case, I definitely agree with where Jesse's coming from, that it's about engagement, and you try to reach out and get them engaged, and if they're engaged, they're not going to be looking at in my opinion, they're not going to be looking at their phone and their iPad. But if they're not engaged, then it doesn't matter what they have, they'll find something else to focus on.
And that might change depending on game systems too, but if you get something that's really, really combat heavy like Pathfinder or 4th edition D&D or Shadowrun where they're in the middle of a fight and you're going to be focusing, you do your turn in a minute or 2 or 5 or 10, and then it goes on to the next person and the next person and the next person. It may be 10 or 15 minutes before it gets back around to you. So that temptation, again, to just pick it up, let me check this real quick while it's not my turn, instead of focusing what's going on the table, and then it's like, oh, it's your turn. Okay, put the phone down immediately, and acting like that's okay, but then you spend a lot of time staring through it. Okay, what just happened? Why is he over there now?
Okay, but if it's going to be 15 minutes before my next turn, I mean, what am I allowed to do at your table? Can I go get a drink? Can I write in my notebook? Can I go for that smoke break? Or am I sitting there? I mean, not that I don't enjoy listening to my fellow gamers play, but if it's just mechanic rule crunching, or hell, if it's a scene I'm not in, I mean, there are some people who have no problem with aspects of information, right? How, whether everyone is informed, where all the players are, whether their characters may or may not know things. But there are obviously some games where people prefer to have more of a segregation of information. So in a case like that, how do you handle it?
Never really had a situation. Like I said, it also may be a complete problem with my group that I've played with most recently. They were a very distractible bunch. Many times combat ran long because they were busy talking about the new Sci-Fi Channel original movie in the middle of combat.
Well, we have talked about a couple of ways to kind of address this in the past, at least as far as like maybe setting aside the first 30 minutes for pop culture discussions and whatnot. But this is a good question to ask Jesse. Let's just say in the world of hypotheticals, let's say you're running a game for Daryl's group, and you know that this is kind of an issue. What would you do to address that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if it's a group where it becomes a problem, I don't know, if it's a one-off thing at a convention or something, and yes, you can see it being distracting, then I think it's reasonable to ask for a rule to have people keep the sort of the Alamo rule, if you will, keeping the cell phones dark in your pocket.
Or I will destroy you!
I mean,
For our listeners who don't know what the Alamo Draft House is, and I feel so much pity for you if you don't, because the Draft House is awesome.
Best place to watch a movie ever.
But if you remember that viral video that went around a while back about the woman who got kicked out, the probably teenage girl who got kicked out for texting the theater, "This is the Magnited States of America. I'm free to text in your crappy little theater." That video, that theater is the Alamo Draft House, and Tim League, who runs the theater, is very, very passionate about not allowing phones in the theater, period, whatsoever, at all.
Well, they allow the phones, they just don't allow you to use them during the film. I don't want you to think it's some kind of fascist.
They're not going to check them at the door.
Stormtroopers, pulling your phones out of your pockets at the door or anything.
I also know Tim, so that maybe he may have influenced my sort of heavy-handedness on this issue as well.
Right. So Jesse, you would basically just talk to people and see, sort of implement the Alamo rule, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that given my personal preferences, I would try to find a game system where there wasn't a huge lag between people's turns. I mean, to me, that's sort of a narrative killer.
Something like Big Eyes, Small Mouth, for example.
Sure, or I mean, hell, I grew up on Amber basically. Well, maybe not grown up, but fast systems, things that have quick resolutions and so forth. Where we're getting forward, people are able to make decisions and engage and do stuff. But
now, just as a quick aside, for people who are into Amber, you work with Jason Dural.
Never met the man.
And he is one of the main writers on basic roleplay and a lot of more recent Amber Diceless stuff.
Yes.
Is he the guy who just kickstarted the sort of spiritual successor to Amber? Or is that someone else?
Jason didn't kickstart it.
He's involved, I think. But...
He is. He is, I think, the main writer on Lords of Gossamer and Shadow.
That's the one.
Yeah. No, Jason's a great guy. He was the writer on Wizard and still wears that crown and has helped me do a lot of get into everything down here.
I'm lucky to have him in my nerd writers group that we occasionally get together and talk about writing.
Cool.
So.
I was going to say that I think that it becomes more problematic if you're doing some kind of game where everyone has a tablet, where everyone has a laptop, for whatever reason, where it's just an alt tab away to check Facebook. That, I think, would be a bit more problematic and harder to regulate. I mean, it's sort of like if I'm playing in an MMO, and raiding with my guild or group or whatever you want to call them, and I've got 3 other browser windows open. I mean, that becomes a bit more potentially distracting, harder to regulate, harder to kind of stay engaged with, and that takes, I think, a bit more self-policing.
Right. Well, now I got a question actually I want to direct to both of you, but first actually to Daryl to give him a chance. What do you think you could do to take your phone or your tablet and actually use it to enhance the game experience?
I have racked my brain trying to figure it out, and aside from something we're going to get into here in a moment, I believe, which is that there's all these neat little apps and other things that have been coming out a lot recently. I can't really think. The biggest one I could think of would probably be if you're playing one of those really big intrigue games where there's a lot of players working against players behind the scenes, and they have to, instead of passing little crib notes all the time, because I remember when we used to run World of Darkness or Paranoia or even some of our D&D games. It would be, I would get little wads of paper thrown at me every couple seconds, and something like instant messaging or texting would be amazing for that. And I think there was even someone built like the ultimate gaming table, and it had tablets built into it with an instant messaging system built in on the player's side, so all the players could send IMs to the GM and stuff like that.
Well, if you were always getting hit with spitballs during your games, that would explain a lot about your style. No, but seriously, that Ultimate Gaming Table sounds pretty awesome. But Jesse, what about you? What would you use your phone or your tablet to enhance the game experience?
I think, I think that stuff is great. As again, we talk about Amber, which has a lot of player, versus player conspiratorial stuff, and White Wolf games and so forth can really feed into that. I think if you're doing it a more traditional game, if you could tie kind of your mapping software, if you will. I mean, I always thought, I got a huge kick out of the first time I bought a erasable hex board, right? And was able to draw the dungeon out and see the miniature.
Have you seen Jolly Blackburn's setup before?
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
he's got an amazing Hackmaster thing where it's got to be seen to be believed.
Yeah, it's like a 24-inch or 32-inch flat screen TV. He has a Lexan case over with a grid etched into it so he can mark on it, but that's hooked up to either his laptop or his tablet, and he feeds in maps on the TV screen, so you're actually playing on the TV screen, and he can change the maps and change effects and things like that, swap them out. It's really awesome.
Conversely, if you had a group where, kind of a special forces recon, Ghost Recon kind of game, where groups are split up and you could show them different images based on what part of the, compound they were infiltrating, the base they're sneaking into. That could be great too, as a way to have a group where the players have split up, which we often hate, but where they're able to actually stay in communication via headset, Uber technology, magic, tarot cards, whatever. That could be a really cool way to do that type of thing too.
Well, I've got a few things I want to say on this subject because I've used my tablet quite a bit, and I've seen other people use their phones and tablets. For me, I think the way that you can use to enhance the game experience is actually through both visuals and sound, primarily. I have a good friend of mine who runs games at conventions, and one way he gets your attention at the convention, because it is a social situation where you don't necessarily know all the people at the table, and it can be kind of hard to make that connection with them, to really draw them in and immerse them in the setting. So what he does, he has a lot of sort of visual shortcuts on his laptop. Like, for example, one of the games is sort of a silly superhero game, and the chief, if you will, of the bureau that hires the superheroes is actually a monkey wearing a suit. And what he'll do is he'll pop up his iPad and bring up the image of the monkey wearing the suit, and then talk, in character as the monkey, and everyone's kind of staring at the screen, and they're just kind of simultaneously getting that immersion of, okay, I see the monkey, so therefore I don't have to imagine it, right? With sound, well, actually, I'm gonna do another one with sight first. I was running Shadowrun, and there's a lot of really great places you can go to find cool cyberpunk city shots of high-tech city streets and things like that. So it was very easy for me to kind of show the characters the different areas of Seattle they were in just by saying, okay, well, now you're here. And I would flip up the screen and show, the really crowded, dingy streets of the Barrens. Or then I could flip it around and they could go to Bellevue, which is actually or a different part of Seattle. I forget the name. That's really high-tech and upscale, and you could show a picture of that. And it helped, kind of put them right into where they were supposed to be. And sound-wise, a good friend of mine runs a Asian superheroes game at conventions. He plays a theme song that's very good for that. And I've ran, for example, Venture Brothers hero game, and I'd play the theme song for the Venture Brothers at the beginning of the game, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, we're into this, if they know the show. What I'm saying is, as a shortcut, I think there's ways to use those phones and tablets specifically to enhance the senses of sight and sound to kind of bring people back into the game.
No, totally. And I mean, back in, let's say the 90s, when I was doing a lot of gaming with various high school groups and university groups, we'd do print-offs of cool pictures, and we'd do, CDs or mixtapes. And
that's old school.
Right. I mean, all that stuff was great, but very hard to put together and rudimentary and so forth. having it accessed on a tablet, at a swipe, at a touch of a finger, is so much more convenient, and you can queue up so many, you can hold so much more information, have things, on queue. It's awesome.
There's a Kickstarter going on right now that's just for sound effects for fantasy role-playing games, like the clash of sword against shield sort of stuff, or the sound of a spell. It's like a soundboard you can put on your tablet and have those kind of enhance the game.
I used to have a stack of CDs that were all of that stuff. So yeah, that would be really cool to have, like, just as a pack of MP3s on my laptop or my tablet to play during the game. But yeah, okay. So I guess, here's another question for Daryl, and I will also throw it to you, Jesse, after Daryl gets a chance. But helper apps for different games, things like Hero Lab and the D&D character builder, are these things that you use, and if so, how do you use them?
Cannot live without them. Unless it's a system that's really, really rules light, where you can whip up a character in like 5, 10, 15 minutes, like we're doing a Fate or something like that, yeah, I'll still use pencil and paper. But anything else, anything more complicated than creating a character in like World of Darkness, which is still a pretty simple and straightforward character generation program, I am still going for, even if it's just some fan-made Excel spreadsheet someone made, I can't do it. Don't get me wrong, I've got no problem making characters the old-fashioned way. I've got in my box full of notes that I've written for novels and film ideas and all that from all the way back in high school that I don't want to throw out because I'm paranoid something's good in there, even though every time I look at it, I cringe. In there is probably 300 or 400 notebook character sheets for Shadowrun 2nd and 3rd edition characters I've made over the years. So I've got no problem doing the analog thing, but Hero Lab or NS, there's an old one for 3rd edition, was called NSRCG.
Yeah.
Can't remember what it is, but the Shadowrun character, it was one of the best character generators I ever had. It was freeware. Someone did it as a fan project. It was awesome.
Yeah, I have a copy of it.
Yeah, I haven't used Hero Labs yet, so I can't really comment on how good theirs is. I've just used the one for Pathfinder for them, and even their Pathfinder one's really good. But I can make a Shadowrun character in 3rd edition using that program, or using one of the 4th edition character generators to make a 4th edition character. Half an hour tops if I'm making like a really complicated decker with a custom built cyber deck that I'm building from scratch. So yeah,
I totally have the same thing. But I'm gonna actually ask Jesse, what do you think about that?
I think they're potentially great. I mean, I don't play enough things that are so complicated these days to need them, which is really just a sad statement of how much gaming I'm able to get done. But I think one of the things that it kind of opens up is the idea of, and I'm a little leery to suggest this, but you can have games and game systems that are more complicated when you have the apps that can handle the mechanics behind it, right? I mean, that's one of the things I think that made MMOs and other computer games so popular, is being able to simplify and streamline and speed up the combat, but also make it kind of more complicated, have more kind of moving parts under the hood, right?
More depth,
yeah. If you can track more than simple hit points and mana points or whatever, you can have all sorts of modifiers factoring into things that are kind of neat and cool, but when you're actually trying to calculate them on paper and figure out what they are on the fly in the middle of the game session are mostly terrible.
Well, we can only hope that someday they'll invent like an AI that will kind of, be a helper and just keep track of all the modifiers for you, because, then we could have some really, really crazy complex. We could probably play Traveler and not have to, calculate.
Let's not go crazy here.
No, for real. I love Traveler. I'm poking fun at it because I love it. But
even Watson couldn't handle that, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, here's a question: look at 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Would it be possible to really play that game, making a character pen and paper with all the books spread out, all the supplements, all the powers, and all the little stuff interacting? Would it even be possible to do a character by hand for that game?
Well, possible, yes, but not fun. Or, well, I'm stretching the point, because it would be fun. Making a character is fun in its just basic function, but it would be a little tedious, I think, is what I would say, if you had to go through all of those books at the same time.
6 people around the table, do it up quickly. No, it would just be, that would be your weekend, right?
Well, that's where I wanted to say something quick about Hero Labs. I think Hero Labs is a really great product. Daryl pointed out that there was NSRCG for 3rd edition Shadowrun. Hero Labs has a great program for 4th edition Shadowrun, and I played a ton of that over the last couple of years. Now, that is a character generation system that is extremely deep. There are so many options, from your race to your skills to the cyberware or magic or maybe both.
It's a beast before you even start pulling from all the splat books.
Right, and I really love games that have a lot of depth. That's why I love Champions, for example, which is, extremely math heavy, but it's also extremely deep in terms of the types of choices you get to make about character generation. And I think, like Daryl, I would have to say I don't think I would have had nearly as much enjoyment in making characters and learning how to build a character that I want to play without the help of something like Hero Lab. That also goes. Let's kind of move beyond character generation though for apps and things like that. What about things like the character sheets that you can throw on your digital character sheets that are sort of kept in the cloud? What about things like dice rollers or combat trackers?
Dice rollers are the devil's spawn. I think you need a bag of dice.
Okay. I want you to hear something right now. See if you can hear this. Could you hear that? This noise?
Ladies and gentlemen, Daryl is also the sound engineer for Gamers Tavern.
Yes. Okay, my microphone picked it up. I don't know if Skype picked it up.
I heard it.
But that was the sound of a dice rolling. That was fun. I want to do it again, except the dice rolled under the bed. But it was fun. Here, let me do this on my dice rolling app. Oh, I punched the phone and a number came up. Woo-hoo.
But it did not go under the bed. I will say this. I think the idea of a dice roller is great because there are times when people forget their dice.
That's why I own 2 pounds of dice from Chessex and bring them with me everywhere I game.
Well, that's wonderful, but I'm saying there's going to be times where people are going to forget things, and it's just one less thing you have to do without. If you happen to have something on your phone, it's like, for me anyway, it's like a backup. It's like, oh crap, I forgot my dice. Well, at least I have my dice roller. Now, I think I'm like Jesse in that you'll take my dice from my cold dead hand. I love rolling dice, but I think it's nice that there's an option out there.
I mean, the option's good, but it's not fun.
Well, I understand that Daryl is on record as saying he is not in favor of the dice rollers. I understand that. Now, a lot of board games actually out there these days are doing like tracking apps. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Descent as a board game.
A little bit, yeah.
So Descent is a pretty complex board game. It has a lot of depth.
Right.
There's Fantasy Flight did a really good thing back for 1st edition Descent where they released an app that was a campaign tracker. Now, I'm going to take it back. I'm not sure if it was Fantasy Flight or if some interested fan did it, but somebody did a campaign tracker that would allow you to sort of keep all of your information between games on the cloud and keep it, help you organize in between games to see how far you were going and where the overlord was, and I just thought that was brilliant. And I think that you can see more of that coming for board games and things of that nature. Probably it might even, I believe that the guys that make Hero Labs, which is Wolf Lair, they have come out with a thing called Realmworks, which is...
That's the thing they're doing for... No, that's something else. The Army Tracker for miniature war games they have.
That's Army Builder. That's
Army
different.
Builder.
Yeah, but I'll talk about Army Builder in a second. But Realmworks is the new thing from them that is actually kind of like the Descent campaign tracker, but it's for role-playing games. And I haven't used it yet, but I understand it's actually really good. Well, I definitely think we should check it out. If any of our listeners out there have played Realmworks, definitely drop us a line or make a comment on our webpage because I'm curious to know what you guys think of it.
Exactly. I'm really curious about it myself because you were talking about digital character sheets and the combat trackers,
right.
And there's a lot of them out there, but I've tried a couple of them and they're okay, I guess. But and it may just be because I've been doing this for so long the old school way. It's actually slows me down to try to use the user interface. And I think what that industry really needs is one kind of breakout product that's just knocks it out of the park.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I think that does really well, that is almost that it comes close, maybe. And for me, that's actually Obsidian Portal. Have you guys ever used Obsidian Portal?
I have not, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah, I played with it for my campaign, but I didn't get in depth enough to it. It looked like it was really, really cool, but there was a little bit of a learning curve on it. But this is before the update that they kickstarted.
So for anybody who doesn't know what it is, Obsidian Portal is a website you can go to, and basically it is a fantastic place for you to put all the information about your campaign and have it available online. And here's another good reason why someone might want to have their phone or tablet at the game, because they can actually look up on a little wiki that you can build on Obsidian Portal. And maybe they missed a session, or maybe they just forgot who Galgax the Wizard is. And they're like, oh, Galgax, is he the guy from Rotamaron? Well, let me check. And, they'll just go on the wiki and kind of look that up and go, oh, yeah, he was the guy who betrayed us at the last...
So no more Bob the Necromancer?
Well, maybe it will help GMs who have memory issues. I know I personally.
Well, no, it's not me. It's my players. I will go in and I will spend an hour doing entomology research on name origins and pick just the perfect name that has the perfect meaning for this important NPC, and then I put them down on the table. It's like, okay, that's Bob, that's Jim.
Well, Obsidian Portal is not just a storage site. I mean, it's not just a wiki, but it's also where you can put your character sheets, your pictures.
It's like part wiki, part blog, part like image storage thing.
Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna go one more step further. So, are you guys familiar with the term blue booking?
Yes. It's been a while since I've heard it though.
So, blue booking is a term that actually sprung out of a 1980s game supplement called Strike Force for Champions. It was written by Aaron Alston, who was actually here in Austin just last weekend. And it is one of the greatest books, in my opinion, for talking about how GMs should run a campaign. It's just a really brilliant book for that. And one of the things that the Strike Force talked about was the idea of blue booking. And Aaron Alston defines blue booking as a way for players to keep playing their characters sort of away from the gaming table. They're sort of telling stories about what their characters are doing in between games. Now, originally this was done in little blue notebooks. They would just write in them, and that's where the term blue booking comes from.
I'd never heard the term before, but I actually did something similar to this before Obsidian Portal. Like about 3 or 4 years ago, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, I set up a wiki for my campaign world. And I set it so the players could go in and edit, so they could go in if they had a home. I had like this broad overview of the campaign, but any little details, like I'm from this town and this little nation over here, they could sit there and fill in the wiki for it, or they could fill in their characters, and I would have a campaign recap that I would actually have them maintain, so they could tell their memories, and I would just go in and fix where they misremembered something or if they forgot something important.
With Amber, also, I mean, it really introduced me to the idea of player contributions, which I'm sure came out of blue booking originally, conceptually, where people would get sort of extra points for their character builds by volunteering to do stuff, whether it was keeping a character diary or keeping a game log, like you're talking about, Daryl, where they would. So one player generally would maintain a history of what was going on, which is great because they could then influence it, to being the person writing the history, to slant it as they wanted.
And for my game, Shadows Angelus, which was a game I ran for about a year and a half, we did 26 episodes, which, 26, we call them episodes because it was very cinematic, but 26 sessions, okay? And my players were really having a good time playing their characters, and they wanted to keep playing their characters after the game was over, so they would start writing little stories about what their characters were doing in between games. They were blue booking, but they were doing it on like a Google Groups, or Yahoo Groups, or what was at the time. And when it was all said and done, that 26-session campaign, they had written over 90 stories. So that's like 3 stories per session. And, that's the kind of thing that prior to having technology that we could sort of access and read, maybe not at the table, maybe, in between games, but that's something that technology allows us to do a little more, a little better, is to help tell stories with our characters, even when we're not just at the table. I guess, the next thing we should probably talk about is, technology-wise. Now most books that people read, or use reference for their rules, most of these books are being carried around on tablets or being carried around on phones as PDFs. And how do you feel about that, Daryl?
I have a love-hate relationship with it. Now, when it comes to sitting at a table running a game, I want the Dead Tree format book. I want actual paper and ink that I can thumb through in it. This is probably, again, just because this is how I've done it since I've ever started gaming, I can find a rule faster in a rule book thumbing through it than I can using a search program or keywords or bookmarks or anything like that. I can just thumb through because I know what order the pages are in because I've read through the book so many times. I can thumb through it and find it faster. I can't do it as fast on a PDF. But, one, conventions. It is so much better to bring your tablet or your e-reader or your phone or your laptop and run your game off that than try to carry a backpack full of every single game book you're going to need for whatever game you're running. And that even goes for home games, too. If you're not playing in your own house and you're having to lug a backpack full of 100 pounds worth of books, that's insane. The other thing is, I love PDFs for, like, splat books and source books and fluff books because I can read those anytime I want on my phone or wherever. I don't need the physical copy for that because I'm not flipping through it and referencing it all the time like I am the rule books.
What about you, Jesse?
Oh, I think at the table, tablets, electronic, format is great. I think it's terrific to have it. Really, when I'm at home having the books on my shelf, that's when I want to see, physical hard copies of stuff. I think everything that Daryl said about taking it, to conventions and so forth is totally true, of course. I know some people who, for space reasons, as we've gotten older and have to share space with children and wives and husbands and, whatnot, move more towards having an electronic library. I still have real trouble divesting myself of having the physical copies. But, there's a point where the bookshelves start to collapse a little bit under their weight, so...
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've got overflowing bookshelves at home, and some of them are overflowing with signed books. That's one reason why I love my Dead Tree products is because they're signed by authors and creators. I happen to have, for example, Game of Thrones RPG signed by Jesse Scoble.
It's a rare thing these days.
Can't exactly sign a Kindle.
Well, that's true. Now, more and more games actually are sort of coming into that digital age. You've seen things like The Elder Sign, which was a board game by Fantasy Flight Games and is now an app you can download. And
yeah, almost all of them have an app version now. Settlers of Catan, Ticket to Ride, Dominion, Lords of Waterdeep just came out with an app version of their game.
Really? Oh, wow, I've got to get that.
Yeah, that just got announced at Gen Con, actually.
Wow, all right. Well, hey, I'm behind the times.
I was actually going to say, Ross, one of the things that I think when you buy a physical copy of a book, gaming or otherwise, I think you should be allowed to have the digital version for free, personally.
Oh, that's an excellent business plan. I agree with that.
Are people worried about piracy? Well, I'm not. I'm not particularly worried about it. And I think that that's a great way to promote things. And you want people to have your game and to be able to access it whenever they're thinking about it. I think facilitating that is a good thing, rather than trying to make people buy an additional copy as a digital copy, which I think is not so great.
There's a lot of publishers these days that are actually doing that, where if you buy the print copy, you also get a PDF. I think Savage Worlds is doing a lot of that.
I was going to say, you guys are actually in the industry, so you probably have heard this argument before, I'm sure, but I've talked to a lot of people about this thing over the years, debating on message boards, because I'm completely in your camp. I think you should get the digital product free. However, the counter argument to that is, it may seem like it is a free thing where you've already got it in InDesign because you had to lay it out digitally anyway to send it to the printer. Why can't you just export it to a PDF? Well, because then you have to go through and you have to make sure the layout functioned correctly in a PDF to make sure nothing got screwed up. You have to go through and add the bookmarks. You have to go through and double check make sure the art didn't bleed over. Make sure that any sort of context searching is correct. So there is extra work that has to be done on a digital PDF, and especially with the board game apps, that's a completely different beast because that's a game that's getting programmed from the ground up. That's like your Angry Birds, your Candy Crush, or whatever. It's the same thing, only it's based off this other board game that exists.
Well, what you just said about all the different things you have to do to get the PDF right, that's actually a service that's offered by Drive-Thru RPG. And, for example, when I was working at Fantasy Flight Games, we would basically just do what you said. We would take the InDesign files for the published book and send that to Drive-Thru, and then Drive-Thru would go through and add all the bookmarks, and they would double check and make sure that it would be available and ready for people to buy as a PDF and then use in that format.
But even if you're doing the work yourself, as a small indie publisher or whatever, publishing house, presumably you're going to be selling some copies that are purely digital, and that money should be able to go in and fund, the work to make those copies in the first place. Or you slightly increase the price of your game or whatever. You factor that price in. I mean, I think that the goodwill and getting it out into more hands, counters the minimal loss in revenues.
The threat of piracy.
As one, yes.
Yeah, if they're going to pirate a game, it's going to get pirated. It doesn't matter what you do. Any sort of DRM or access blocking or protection you do, all it does is inconvenience your paying customers. The pirates don't care. They're going to get around it. Wizards of the Coast did not release anything digital for their core books. Anything they printed, it was print only. You had to go to a store or go on Amazon and buy a paper and ink copy of that book. They were online within 2 weeks of every single release date.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. Are you familiar with Eclipse Phase?
Yes.
So Adam Jury did something I consider very smart. He actually released Eclipse Phase for free.
Creative Commons.
Yeah, it was his Creative Commons license. You could just go download the whole book whenever you wanted to for free. And he said, I'm going to show you guys exactly what piracy means to a small-scale publisher like the name of his company is, I kind of forgot what it was.
Posthuman Studios.
Posthuman, thank you. Yes, so a small publisher like Posthuman, he's going to show what that means. And he actually did a really great blog post about this. We should actually add the link into the show notes. But he did a blog post where he kind of broke down what the results of that were a year later. And surprisingly, the vast majority of people who downloaded the free copy also bought the actual book. And it was a large percentage. I mean, it was not small at all.
Which that actually matches pretty much every single study that's been done that wasn't financed by the RIAA or MPAA when it comes to piracy in any media.
Right. I mean, I've had the pleasure to meet Cory Doctorow and to read a number of his things. And, for those who don't know, he's a writer, primarily. He does columns for BoingBoing.net, but he's an author and novelist and has a...
Does he wear a cape and goggles?
I don't think so.
XKCD joke. Sorry.
But when Cory first started putting out, he puts out almost all his stories under Creative Commons license and accessibility. When he first started doing it, people said, well, you can do it because nobody knows who you are, so no one cares. And now that he's a pretty big name, people say, well, the only reason you can do it is because you're Cory Doctorow, and so you're going to make your sales anyways.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Right. So you kind of take your stance, and I think you have to kind of live with it and ride out your experiment however you want to conduct it. But I agree with him. I agree with Adam Jury that putting your stuff out in front of as many people as possible, making it as easy to get to, is generally the better way.
Especially when you have people like me. Sure, I'll download the PDF for free, but if I start running a campaign of it, I'm going to go buy that print copy because I don't want to thumb through the PDF.
So yeah, I agree with both you guys. I think getting the word out there is really important. Another great example is Pathfinder's open beta. They released the rules for their whole game basically and said, here it is. Tell us what you think. They were using it as a way to get playtest information, but it was also the rules of the game, and they're just out there.
And that's starting to become the standard almost, isn't it?
I don't know if we trace that back kind of biggest to the D20 kind of open license, but I think that you're right. A lot of gaming companies are doing it, and it's good to see more of it out there.
What's interesting also is, we've talked about how RPGs are using technology and stuff like that. And we talked a little bit about, like, board games. What I think is really cool is how miniature games are starting to leverage the technology as well. And
harebrained schemes.
Well, this goes all the way up to Games Workshop, who has recently done a thing where they're doing digital releases of their codexes. Actually, they're pushed updates out to these. If you have the codex and they do an update or a rules fix or an errata, it's actually pushed right out to you, which is really cool. Yeah, that's exciting.
Something out for free? That's shocking.
Well, you have to buy the codex, right? But I think the updates are free.
And Drive-Thru RPG does the same thing with their PDFs. If there's a new printing with errata, they'll update your PDF.
Well, but it's not just Games Workshop though. There was a game that's unfortunately dead now, but it was called the X Illis that was using technology. It was letting you track your miniature games I think it was kind of like a proto Skylanders, if you're familiar with Skylanders, where you would track the progress of your miniatures in miniature games, and they would level up and things like that. Now I think sort of the adult Skylanders is the new thing from Harebrained Schemes, as Daryl was saying, Golem Arcana. Are you familiar with that?
That is going to revolutionize things if it works the way they want it to work.
I think I'm kind of got a little more of a wait and see attitude on that. I think it's possible. I mean, Jordan Wiseman has definitely done some things in gaming that have had huge repercussions afterwards, and he has really done a lot of great things. But he's also had a few things that didn't work out so well. So I'm kind of curious. I'm going to wait and see.
I'm really, really curious about it because it hits. I don't do a lot of miniature gaming because there are two big barriers for me. One, there is a lot of bookkeeping in a good miniatures game because you've got a lot of depth of rules there. This is going to fix that because I point my little magic pen at it and voila, done. Number two, as I've said before, I cannot paint for shit.
Well,
These miniatures are coming pre-painted, and apparently they're really easy to repaint too, to touch up.
I'm gonna quickly disagree with you a little bit, Daryl, on the idea that you have to have a lot of bookkeeping to have a good miniature game. I actually don't think that's true, but to each their own.
Games. I don't play miniature games, so I'm the outsider looking in, and all I see when I go to tournaments is everyone with these awesome minis spread out over these big, huge tables in the game room, and they're all staring at these binders.
Well, yeah, that's tournament. A tournament mentality, though, is a different mentality, and that's going to be true. That's going to be true whether you have 10 rules or 10,000. They're going to be studying those things very, very sharply because it's highly competitive.
Speaking of a tournament mentality, there is one game that I will only play online anymore. Magic the Gathering. Because all I have to do is go pay my $10 or $20 to buy the game when it comes out every year, instead of taking out a second mortgage to be able to play in a Friday Night Magic game.
Yeah. And nobody can tear up your cards either, which is always good.
But it's also a bad thing. I miss that tactile feel anytime I play any sort of board game online, because I like rolling the dice, I like shuffling the cards, I like moving the little pieces around, and you lose that in those.
I should also mention MechWarrior Tactics, which is basically BattleTech played online. And if you've ever played BattleTech, which probably a lot of you have,
yes,
you know exactly how it works, and it works just like it does in MechWarrior Tactics. It's actually really surprising how faithfully it is an adaptation of that. So,
I love that game. I love it.
Well, we should definitely do an episode about BattleTech because I also am a big, huge fan of it. Maybe Jesse, are you a BattleTech fan?
I mean, it's been 20-something years since I've even looked at a BattleTech. But I mean, we had a lot of game nights with it, but it's been a little too long, probably.
I understand, but I'll say now, and I think we should definitely come back to this, Daryl, in a future episode. But all I'll say for now is that there's a new version out called Alpha Strike, which is way smoother, way faster, way more fun. And not that BattleTech wasn't fun, but it's just so much less bookkeeping and so quick and so fast moving, and I've fallen in love with it. It's just fantastic.
It is currently sitting behind Accursed in my review queue right now for Anical News.
And, just on that topic, let's talk about Accursed a little bit, because what Accursed did, I think that was, interesting in terms of our topic here. And I was inspired by Sean Patrick Fannon's Shinetar Kickstarter to do this. We did a digital-only release. When we kickstarted Accursed, and for those who don't know what Accursed is, it's my Savage World setting, and we kickstarted it in October, and we did really, really well. But the thing about it is that we decided not to have a physical fulfillment. We were going to release it as a PDF. Now you can get a physical copy of the book. You just have to get it through drive-thru as a POD, print on demand. But what we didn't want to do, as first-time Kickstarters, what we didn't want to do is have to worry about garages full of product, or taking a dump truck down to the local UPS and sending out.
Or forgetting to put that note from your printer in China: do not stack more than 3 tall, and having half of your inventory crushed, like the guy who ran that the Kickstarter for the Roman combat board game, and he lost his house because he had to replace half his stock because he forgot to put one little instruction on the invoice.
So yeah, physical fulfillment was something we didn't want to do. So we just did digital only, and it worked out. It's worked out so well so far, really, really well for us. And I think once we get the book done and out to our backers, which is going to happen in December, as long as ninjas don't kidnap anyone, that is our plan. And I think I think it worked out really well for Sean Patrick Fannin as well on Shinetar. And I think it's almost kind of the wave of the future, especially for people who are more independent and don't have the funds or the storage space for large print runs, is to do digital only. And I'm kind of curious, what do you guys feel? How do you feel about like an RPG product that is something you literally cannot get as a book in a game store? It's only way. I mean, you could get a copy if you really, really want one, but it's kind of a little bit more of a process than just going down to Dragon's Lair and picking it up off the shelf.
I'm a little torn on it. I mean, I understand the reality of the industry these days, and what print runs really are, and how many copies people are selling. So with Robin Law's Hillfolk Kickstarter, Robin is a friend from the Toronto gaming scene and from the industry in general, and he did fabulously well with his Hillfolk book, which should be coming out soon if people haven't gotten it yet. I was able to contribute to one of his additional settings pitches. And at first I was, really excited to be in the companion volume. I think it's called Blood on the Snow. But then he got so many awesome contributions that, he had to basically squeeze some out. And so I've become one of the Electronic Updates, a Pitch of the Month contributor. Which on one level is like, oh, great, I'm not in the hard copy. I don't get to put it on my shelf. That's a little sad. At the same time, I was able to write 2 or 3 times the amount of content because there was no space limitations. And it gets out, it'll have more of a spotlight because it'll be kind of the one thing people get that month. So that's kind of cool. So, for my own sort of personal, vanity side of things, being able to look at my shelf of stuff I've done, I definitely love physical copies of things. But to get more content out there, more cool ideas, I understand the reality and why we need to do, electronic only sometimes.
What about you, Daryl?
I got a lot to say on this topic. First off, digital-only releases, especially combined with Kickstarter, are a big double-edged sword because it's now instant gaming publisher.
Just add water.
Exactly. Just add Kickstarter, and voila. That's all you need. And if you've got experienced people from the industry doing this, like you guys, when you did Accursed, you guys knew the industry. You knew how it worked. You knew the business side of things. However, there's a lot of these Kickstarters that's just some kid who, I've been playing games since I was 12 and I'm 17 now. I know everything about gaming. I'm going to start a company. So they throw up a Kickstarter and sure, they get $500 because their brother's girlfriend's sister's cousin happens to draw really good and had a really good art piece that he did, and they threw it up on the Kickstarter and made it look really nice and professional, and they end up with a couple $1,000 because their goal was so low that they hit their goal, and they got like $2,000-3,000 for this PDF release. And now this kid has to jump into entertainment law because maybe he doesn't know. He goes on Google image search and pulls all his art off that thinking it's on the internet. It's free. Lawsuit. This is an open gaming license thing. I can put anything I want from it in there. So, okay, Beholder and Mind Flayer and lawsuit. And now this kid is pretty much in deep shit because he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know he had to file taxes because he's just a guy who printed something, but he's made enough money that he legally has to file taxes. The IRS finds out, audit. So it's a real double-edged sword for people who don't do the research before they jump into these things.
That being said, I think it's cool that there is less of a gatekeeper for getting people to publish games because I'm kind of excited to see, maybe not every kid, with a dream is going to succeed. Like, some of you pointed out a lot of the pitfalls that are, going to happen. But just the fact that they are able to do it, I think is great. I mean, because you didn't really have this back in the 80s or in the 90s or even the early 2000s. You didn't really have this kind of ability to take an idea and make it real through crowdfunding. And I think, like I said, it's exciting to me that people have that chance. And there are certainly a lot of Kickstarters, some that have failed and some that have succeeded but still failed because they didn't get their fulfillment out. But there's been a lot of those that I think are really great ideas, and I'm glad that people got a chance to at least show them to kind of put that out there and promote the things that they were thinking about.
Yeah, if the people actually approach it like a business and understand what they're doing, you can do some amazing things because, like I said, no gatekeeper. I can make this really niche game I can make a role-playing game about being a chef in a kitchen that will only appeal to other foodie type people that no publisher would ever touch.
And I just want to say for the record, I am available if anyone is doing a Kickstarter and needs someone to write some things for them. You can absolutely reach me.
So, do you want to work on my Kickstarter? I'll give you a credit. It'll be great for exposure.
Well, no, I don't work for free.
That's the other side of the thing, is you'll get a lot of that.
No, but I'm just saying, there's one thing we did with the Cursed Rise. We reached out to a lot of people that I know, for example, Jesse, and said, hey, would you like to, write some stuff for us if we hit a stretch goal? And I got a lot of great people saying yes, including Jesse. Unfortunately, we didn't hit the level that we needed to get Jesse on board, but, the fact is that they were willing to work for it. And, I think that's maybe something that if you are out there and you want to do a Kickstarter and create a digital product, and you want to get some people maybe who are interested in working on that kind of thing, don't hesitate to reach out to maybe some of the guys that you think are really good writers for the particular project that you're trying to fill.
Yeah, I do want to say I am being kind of Debbie Downer on this, but I really do. I cover Kickstarters in my column for a reason. It is a really, really great tool for people who know how to use it properly, and that's the only thing I'm trying to. Basically, I'm trying to warn people. Think it through, plan it out, know what you need to know before you jump into this.
Daryl Mott, the Kickstarter lifeguard, is on duty, and he will tell you when you're drowning.
Insert whistle blow here.
Jesse, what's your opinion about Kickstarters and digital product? Obviously you worked with Robin Laws on Hillfolk, but if someone's doing a Kickstarter for a digital product and they want to get people to come on board and help, is that something how do you feel about that?
I think it's fine. I mean, I'm less concerned, I guess, about the pitfalls than Daryl is. There's a little bit of, I don't know. I guess I haven't heard enough cautionary tales as it going terribly, terribly wrong with someone being sued out of existence by someone whose image they used. I mean, yes, there is a lot of that sort of potential pitfalls, but there's a lot of that in the internet just in general these days with, everything from YouTube to whatever, torrenting a song. I like to think that ones that are done poorly will tend to not succeed. Or if they happen to raise $500 and they don't deliver, well, it's probably not going to destroy anyone's life if they lose a couple of bucks on a project like that. I do think it's interesting how it's given creators who have a little bit of a name this avenue to a much wider audience. If you had asked me, 10 years ago, would someone like Monty Cook be able to raise $500,000 on his own, on his name, I would have thought you were, smoking crack. It's, maybe a little analogous. I mean, it's kind of a weird, but I was just thinking about it as we're talking about it, to the days when the top flight artists left Marvel and DC and formed Image Comics.
Oh yeah, that's a really good analysis.
And I mean, it had lots of pitfalls there too, right? Where suddenly these guys made way more money than they'd ever seen, and they could draw a comic or they could go on a yacht, and tour Europe for 6 months. So, and
some of them forgot you also needed to write a comic too.
Oh, I don't know if they ever need that, but I mean that's kind of neither here nor there. But I can see it creating sort of all sorts of little kind of indie publishers and so forth, and and I hope for guys like Reaper, like Dwarven Forge, like Monty, like Robin, who are able to really kind of make some serious, bring in some serious income from it, that it helps, keep them doing their thing. I mean, it really kind of helps push it forward. It's when things blow up that it's a bit more unfortunate.
Okay, well, Kickstarter is a technology that is useful in gaming, but the products that are made are often, I mean, like Hillfolk, for example, are often physical in nature. When you're talking about just digital-only products, like I said, just the PDFs, do you feel like that they've hit a market saturation point? Do you feel like that there's still room for people to do just PDFs and not physical books?
Yeah, I don't think there's a limit. I mean, there's, no more than I thought there was a limit when everyone and their brother was publishing D20 compatible material.
Well, I think we're kind of hitting that same point right now with a lot of the stuff, because the signal to noise ratio is so high now, just like it was in the D20 days.
I disagree with you, Daryl. I don't think it's quite like it was back then. I felt like there was only a few people doing really high quality stuff, and most of the time it was not that. But these days, I feel like most of the things I look at on the shelf, maybe I just have a really good game store because I do live in Austin and I do have Dragon's Lair. But maybe that's true. But I feel like when I go in there and look at the shelves that I'm seeing, mostly pretty good stuff, that I have a good chance of picking up something off the shelf and saying, yes, this is a good product, not something that's just sort of made in a garage and stapled together,
Well, one of the real downsides to, the glut of D20 material was that it took up retailer shelf space and retailer dollars, right? And so if you were a small company like we were at Guardians, you had to, it was really hard to fight for airspace. That sounds like the wrong word. Anyway, fight to kind of get out there. Whereas if there's 1,001 PDFs out there, well, yes, it kind of gluts up the drive-through marketplace a little bit. But if you know what you're looking for, it doesn't take dollars away from you. If I'm making any sense there?
No, you totally are. But you bring up a good point that basically if you're doing PDFs in the gaming market, then there really is only one place to take it, and that is Drive-Thru-RPG.
Before we switch topics, I wanted to point out that today's Dork Tower by John Kovalik actually discusses the exact topic we were just talking about with Kickstarters and your friendly local game store being one of the gatekeepers for finding good games.
I think Daryl wasn't fully engaged in this podcast. He was out browsing webcomics. No, for real. That's cool because we love Joe Kovalik. He was on our first episode with us, and absolutely go check out his comic. I think we'll make a link to that in the show notes, won't we, Daryl?
Yes, we will.
Outstanding. So yeah, going back to the idea of PDFs in the marketplace, there is only really one place to take it, isn't that right? I mean, it's Drive-Thru-RPG or nothing.
Why can't you take it to Amazon and sell it as like a Kindle only thing?
Do people go to Amazon to buy RPG PDFs?
Amazon doesn't do PDFs. They only do their own proprietary format, which is based off the EPUB, where you can't have a lot of art. You can't have a lot of tables. You can have a little bit. You can have like a cover art or illustrations here and there, but that's it. There's no big tables, no maps. You can't really do that on Amazon. You have to do that if you're wanting to do that through Amazon, it has to be a print. They don't do PDFs at all.
No, I understand the PDF part, but I'm surprised that they're so limited, because I know they do like children's picture books and stuff, so I would not have thought art was such an impediment. But theoretically, you could put out a electronic format book on Amazon, I would think. I think their barrier to entry is pretty low.
Jesse is correct. You absolutely could do it. I guess, and my point is that people just kind of go to where they know they can get it, and that's drive-through. And I want to be clear, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just, I think, something we kind of have to acknowledge, that there is kind of a monopoly when it comes to RPG PDFs, and that it is Drive-Thru-RPG.
Paizo does do downloads, but I think they only do downloads for Pathfinder and their own products. They don't do third-party stuff. I'm not entirely sure on that, but I couldn't find any when I searched earlier this afternoon.
Well, I see the barkeep is signaling me with his candlestick, which is our secret thieves' cant for it's time to close up the tavern. So I want to thank Jesse for coming on to episode 6 and talking to us about technology and gaming. Thank you very much, Jesse. It has been a pleasure having you on. We'd love to bring you back sometime to talk more to us about gaming. So
where can we find you on the interwebs?
Most often these days on Twitter at JScoble. It's JSCOBLE. Theoretically, I have a website, but it hasn't been updated in forever.
It does say there is a City of Heroes product forthcoming.
Awesome.
Paragon City sourcebook. Just want to point that out.
Wow. I'll go and try to take care of that this weekend. Removing the link, not putting out the products. And otherwise, I continue to write the adventures of all your wizards on Wizard 101. We have a new update, Chrysalis, which is just hit our test servers this week, and will be on live soon. So if you are a very high-level wizard, you can continue the quest against Morganth, the Shadow Queen. And so I'll see you in the Spiral.
Awesome. I do hope some of our listeners are, in fact, Wizard 101 players, because it's a pretty cool game.
And that brings us to the close of Episode 6 of The Gamer's Tavern. We would once again like to thank Jesse Scoble for joining us tonight. If you'd like to support Gamer's Tavern, please visit our website at gamerstavern.org and leave us a comment, visit our sponsors, or click on the donate button. You can also like us on Facebook at Gamers Tavern, follow us on Twitter at Meet in a Tavern, or rate and review us on iTunes. Your comments and reviews may be read on air. The Gamers Tavern podcast is licensed under a Creative Commons non-commercial, no derivatives 3.0 license. Join us next week as John Dunn and Russell Zimmerman join us to talk about all things Shadowrun. Until then, gamers, the tavern is closed.
Hey, have you heard of The Strange? Hi, I'm Bruce Cordell. The Strange is a role-playing game that supposes that just outside of what we think of as normal Earth, there's an alien data network called The Strange. We're running a Kickstarter right now to fund The Strange. To find it, go to Google and type in The Strange Kickstarter and follow the link provided. The Strange is host to a number of hidden worlds called recursions that player characters travel to and explore. One is a place called Arden, where magic powered by souls and other fabulous sorceries actually work.
Bruce and I have designed The Strange to use the same rules engine as Numenera, a rules engine we call the Cipher System. If you know and like Numenera, you'll like The Strange.
This message was brought to you by Monty Cook Games. If you want to know more about The Strange, go to Kickstarter.com and search for us there.